So this comment is propositions help us by being clear. So what's the alternative? Magic? Mystical experiences? Intuition? Whose experiences? Whose intuitions? Okay, they can't understand the other three kinds of knowing. Okay, so we're not going against propositions. We are trying to be better custodians of them. So in my answer, I said propositions are only helpful to the degree that they are accurate and agreed upon. Like currency, they can become inflated. So it's not that we encourage the avoidance of propositions or that they should be replaced with an alternative. It's that every person needs to understand that they have to take responsibility as a custodian of the information ecology. As another user intimated, it's important that propositions accurately signify something in one of the other three kinds of knowing. Fiction books are full of propositions that point to nothing real. Dungeons and Dragons scenarios are full of propositions that point to nothing real. The value comes in their shared, the fact that they are shared by two or more people. Propositions have the power to create entire worlds from nothing. And the only thing they need for them to have power is for them to be shared with someone else. In one sense, I got a lot of misspellings in here. You just gotta look past those. In one sense, this is fantastic. Look at the power of propositions. In another, it makes us extremely vulnerable to invest our minds in entire worlds that are completely fabricated with the potential nothingness of words. So then I'm quoting him. He says, propositions help people by being clear. It seems this, so my response to this, it seems that way when we rely on them so much, but words are actually a layer of obscurity. Let me say that again because I kind of tongue-tied it. Words are actually a layer of obscurity, and it turns out to be quite a feat to utter words that are at a high enough level of resolution and articulation to be commensurate with whatever it is the words are intended to signify. Imagine trying to write everything that goes on when you throw a baseball. Everything. Using words, write down everything. What thought processes are going on in the brain? Which synapses are firing off in the brain and in the nerves? How do the tendons move? What causes them to move? Where are they connected? How many muscle fibers are involved? Okay? How many dermal ridges from the fingers actually touch the ball? Does it spin? And from what kind of angular momentum or torque from the fingers does it spin? Imagine capturing all of this. How much does the weight of the forearm play into the kind of leverage the person throwing the ball is going to put behind the hand and the wrist when they throw it? So when you think about just something simple like throwing a baseball, if you were to reduce it to propositions and be exhaustive, completely comprehensive, you would have to write an entire encyclopedia worth of information just to talk about that one single motion, which means that every time we talk about it and don't do that, we are conveying extreme data reduction. Now, the reason we're familiar with this is because most of us have thrown a baseball. Because you have experienced it, I do not need to get that granular with my description of it because we share a participatory familiarity with what it's like to throw a baseball. And if you didn't, there would be a lot more of explaining to do, okay? So back to this comment over here. And I think I'm about to have some words that are covered up, so let me change this. Whatever is made explicit actually constitutes the limit case of whatever the real thing is. It is in its most reduced form when it is explicit, okay? If this is true, which it's not, but if it was true, it is truth in its most reduced form, which means most of the truth is elsewhere, not captured here. We want to interface and interact with all truth, not just the limit case of truth in its most reduced form. Like, how much can we reduce truth to where it's still recognizable as a thing? That's the limit case. We don't want to operate in the limit case of things. And the concept of limit case comes from neuroscientist Ian McGilchrist. It's in its most reduced form when it is explicit. So, as an independent Baptist, we all want these things to be explicit, and and basically, here's the rule of thumb: if whatever you're doing isn't captured in what we have made explicit already as an independent Baptist, or in our systematic theology, or in our doctrinal confession, then it is automatically the devil. Okay, if you're doing something and we haven't explicated it, it is the devil. Centering prayer. It's not in my little book. Devil. Okay, whatever it is. Devil. Not in my little book. Well, guess what? Most of what's true is not been explicated by whatever denomination you're following. And you got to wake up to that. You need to read a book called The Wisdom of Not Knowing. Okay? Look into the concept of higher ignorance and The Religious Case Against Belief. That's a good book you got to read. Religious Case Against Belief. And then the Examined Life, or the Unexamined Life, something like that. The Unexamined Life is Not Worth Living, that I recently read. So it's data compression and data reduction. One way to mitigate this problem using only words is to resort to something like poetry, narratives, or parables. Unlike rote instructions or prose, these forms of language can serve as an inexhaustible source of unpacking future application and meaning. So they're like Mary Poppins' endless bag, these narratives and poetry and parables, but reductive explication is very finite and is not commensurate with reality at all. This is reductive explication. It's very finite, it's not commensurate with reality. These things are like computer shortcuts that don't point to anything. Okay, there's nothing real there. There's nothing good. There's nothing helpful. There's nothing that causes transformation. As a matter of fact, the concept of growth in accordance with all this nonsense actually stifles growth. When people think they're growing in accordance with all this kind of data, they're actually being stifled in their growth. And that's a big problem. Which means the thing that we think is making us more spiritual and holy and spiritual growth and sanctification is actually stifling us because we're doing it wrong. We're following the world with our propositional normativity, our left hemisphere dominance. We're following the world with all this, and we're not following the fact that we're made in the image of God and seeing things the way He does.